Hey, hey, what's really going on? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency today. Going to be taking a look at Dogecoin. Going to be taking a look at some of these key technical aspects of price action moving forward. Going to be assessing some of these pivotal levels of support and resistance I believe we're going to be interacting with in the kind of near future here. We seem to be interacting in this kind of key zone. We seem to be coming out of a very strong rejection as the whole market seems to be selling off. And so will we have enough momentum to kind of bounce off of this? Can a key pull back and continue the trend upward? Or is this the beginning of a reversal and are we coming back down to near worthless where Dogecoin came from not too long ago? So let me know what you're doing with your bag down below, with your crypto, with your Doge. Do you trade, do you hold, or do you just let the price action unfold? What are your thoughts on Dogecoin's kind of insanely parabolic run so far? Do you think it's coming to an end, or do you think it's just getting started? Uh, Let me know in the comments down below. So jumping right into it, we have this ridiculous uptrend. As we all know, Dogecoin has been insanely bullish. Fundamental support from billionaire Elon Musk, giving the fundamental support that kind of Dogecoin has ever really had in its kind of lifetime, and so he's been kind of carrying it up to his kind of current levels until some very particular fundamental news kind of was released, and his opinion became more real, and so suddenly, all of his very passionate followers that buy whatever he kind of tweets about instantly sort of changed their mind, and this big kind of sell-off occurred, and everything's kind of been selling off since, and the fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the market has been overwhelming. And so now, although Dogecoin is still looking rather bullish technically from a kind of technical perspective, this does seem to be a rather healthy kind of pullback, although we are at resistance, and so I mean this kind of accumulation could play off in a kind of sideways manner for a period of time. I suspect price action to consolidate kind of below 36 cents and above 22 cents for a period of time before finding its way upward back to that kind of like above 50 to 70 cent level. Although before a reversal is to be considered, I do believe we're going to be interacting with that 74 cent level kind of again before we can kind of get bearish on Dogecoin. Like I said, we're still looking kind of bullish with this kind of bounce coming off that key level, but we are at resistance. So this is a very pivotal kind of point. When we consider EngineeringRobo along with these Fibba Zucchini levels, we can see some kind of new perspective kind of come into play as we see price action interacting nicely with these Fibonacci lines, these 0.5 and 0.618 correlating with my key slapping, kicking, spitting, and shoving zone that I have illustrated there. So we have the 0.5 line coming in near the bottom of my zone around 37 cents, and the 0.618 just above the top at 46 cents. And so that does seem to be a kind of key range. I believe price action will not spend much of its time kind of between, in my opinion. I believe we're going to have to kind of fly and like through that kind of price zone and find our way above that 0.618 before we can become short-term bullish again. In my opinion, I suspect price action to find its way kind of toward that 0.382 line at 28 cents. And then to my kind of, like I said, my zone there around 23 cents. I mean, we have that 0.236 line all the way down there at 17 cents, which is which is another kind of bearish target if we see another kind of strong rejection off of perhaps 36 or that 0.5 line, we could see, our way down to that 0.236 level around 17 cents, which would still be a higher low relative to a wick down to 16 cents or like 15.9 back in the 23rd of April. And so price action in a very kind of pivotal state at the moment. We have the sell for and hell coming into play, so this sideways could very much kind of continue for a kind of period of weeks to perhaps a month, as we do have example of Dogecoin consolidating in a very tight range for a very kind of key period of time. When we consider the price of Dogecoin against the price of Bitcoin, we can see some rather bullish price action, in my opinion. We have a lower high rejection off of a kind of lower area of my slapping zone here. We had kind of first initial rejection off of 1286 roughly Satoshi, came all the way back down to a kind of key support level that was resistance back in kind of the beginning of April of 2021 there. And so now we're coming back down to that area as support around that 784 Satoshi line. Upon recovering kind of from that line, we came up to a lower high rejection off the lower part of my zone around kind of ultimately 1087 Satoshi. Strong rejection back down to that zone there around 784. And so ultimately, I suspect price action to find its way kind of toward that kind of zone above 784, perhaps to 736, before kind of finding its way, back upward to that, 1087 to 1286 line. When we consider EngineeringRobo with the Fibba Zucchini lines, as well as what we consider EngineeringRobo. Along with these Fibba Zucchini lines, we can see a kind of new perspective coming into play here. We can see a kind of different set of buy and sell suggestions, and so we don't really have the same scary sell suggestions that we do on the USDT chart, on the BTC chart, and so we have that super buy for, and cloud buy still supporting the uptrend, price action above the 200 daily moving average, which is suggesting that we are still very bullish against the price of Bitcoin, suggesting that we could very much hold or gain against Bitcoin in the upcoming volatility. We have that 0.786 line around 1016 Satoshi, and so that does seem to be kind of local resistance kind of moving forward. We could very much see a kind of rejection off of that level before making our way back down to that 0.618, just above my 784 kind of zone there. The 0.618 line is at 802. We have price action yesterday wicking all the way down to just above that 0.5 line around 653 Satoshi, and so ultimately that could be a very bearish kind of midterm target that we could interact with briefly if we find our way toward that 0.618 and start seeing ourselves kind of falling through it. But ultimately, price action is still looking quite bullish, and I suspect us to find support ultimately above 737. And so we are still looking quite bullish against the price of Bitcoin here when we consider briefly the fear and greed index. When we consider Dogecoin against USDT again, we can see that Dogecoin is very much up in the FOMO zone. There is plenty of FOMO present in the market. There's plenty of sell pressure up at these levels. There is lots going on. There's very volatile price action up in this zone. And so we've been up in this kind of very volatile state since technically the end of January of 2021. And so the fear and greed index is used for kind of more investors that tend to hold against this sideways. And so, I mean, say you were accumulating back in perhaps this zone here. We were briefly in the fear zone at the beginning of November. And say you sold as soon as we entered into the FOMO zone, you would have made, over 1,200% in, just over 87 days, just under 3 months. And so, I mean, say you held through all of that, and you were accumulating back in that zone, and you were saying you were held to current price levels. You bought in the fear zone. You're currently up 13,919%, and so over the course of like just under 200 days. And so, I mean, a little bit of a different strategy kind of involved here for those that tend to hold rather than trade. And so, what to keep in mind when we're up in this level is that the sell pressure is very, very high. And so what happens when prices are in the FOMO zone is that we could very well get up in them, interact with them, and then get rejected right out of them, and kind of find our way back into accumulation again. And so because the sell pressure is so high, this is when traders are going to be taking profit. But if the coin is bullish enough, we can come up in the FOMO zone, tops could get bought, bottoms get bought, and the rally continues. And, we can stay bullish against that sell pressure, keeping us very tight. And then, the volatility of FOMO comes into play, and, we find ourselves wicking up into kind of crazy higher highs that you wouldn't really expect. So you have to be kind of very careful when jumping into a project that's in the FOMO zone. So Dogecoin there's been plenty of FOMO involved in Dogecoin, as we all know. And so now, don't let the FOMO kick in. Use Robo. Don't let the FUD get you in the mud. Now, when we consider Bitcoin against USDT, we can see the ridiculousness that is this sell-off. We have a big bounce off of lows of good old like 30K. I think some exchanges got even lower, but we have these crazy lows, these crazy price levels that nobody expected Bitcoin to return to. But ultimately, that is a bounce off of what was a key support level at one point still. And ultimately we can still be long-term bullish, mid-term perhaps sideways. We could find ourselves, I believe, interacting with these kind of key Fibonacci lines as we have broken this kind of like daily moving average, 200 daily moving average, and we have passed kind of my kind of mid-term bearish targets. And so we could very well find our way interacting kind of above my key support around 32K. There does seem to be local support around 34K, and there seems to be local resistance around 41K. And so I do believe price action to find its way toward 34, perhaps all the way down to 32 again, before making its way back up to that 0.618, which is 41K. And so right now we are looking perhaps short-term bearish, and we can see some sideways accumulation for a period of time before we make our way back upward and see some all-time highs again. And so ultimately, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the market just has to subside, and traders have to kind of get their bearings again, and Bitcoin will have to kind of find its support before we can kind of see the uptrend continue. Although we're still looking quite bullish, even though we have this super sell, sell for, and cloud sell. With those present, we can expect some very heavy sideways with some very aggressive sell pressure present during these kind of sell signals. And so ultimately, my support line is around 32K. I suspect price action to trade below 41K and hopefully above 34K, but 32 is my kind of bottom there. Thank you for hearing my analysis. Thank you for tuning in. Try Engineering Robo free with a link in the description. Subscribe here on YouTube. Check out all the other social media down below. Let me know what you're doing with your crypto, with your Doge. Do you trade? Do you hold? Or do you just let the price action unfold? Are you buying at all these key levels, or are you selling at all the bottoms as soon as it goes back up? Let me know what you're doing with your bag if you have one. Thank you for tuning in, and tune in for the next one.